We've rolled back our football prices. WagerTalk's first full year was 2015, and we've lowered our football season packages to match what we charged that football season. Why? It's simple. We want to make our season-long packages an extraordinary value. You can buy a full college football season or full NFL season for only $5.99 each. But if you buy a college football NFL combo from the same handicapper, you pay only $8.99. Looking to mix and match handicappers? We have you covered. Just email support@wagertalk.com for a bundle discount and to create any handicapper combo you can dream up.
War's good. Hey guys, welcome in. It is time for another edition of College Football Daily, powered by WagerTalk.com, as it is here. The time is now week 0 college football. It is back, and who better to break down these 4 games coming up here than our good friends Ralph Michaels and Rob Veno joining us here on this Friday. And gentlemen, it seems like it was just yesterday we were breaking down bowl games, but now here we are, Ralph. It is upon us this weekend. College football is back, and pretty excited about it. How about you?
Oh, there's nothing like the pageantry of college football, Joe. I'm glad there's going to be fans. Hopefully they'll be lasting all season. But to me, it's the best regular season without question of any sport. The 2021 college football season is finally here.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe. It's been a while there, Rob Veno, but it is back, my friends. Like riding a horse, though, right? We've been talking. It's been baseball on our minds for a while, but obviously we knew this moment was coming, and it is here, my friend. Looking forward to it. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And, the prep starts early, so been at this for better part of 2.5, 3 months now, going through stuff. So, it's only a 12-game season, so you have to adjust on the fly so quickly in college football that, if you get caught behind the 8 ball early, you never really seem to catch up. So we're ready to roll here. Glad to have it back. As Ralph mentioned, the one team we'll talk about here today, when they're home, they won't have fans in the stands, at least early on. But most everybody else, all good, and let's hope it stays that way for all 15, 16 weeks, whatever it is. Ralph, I didn't even show you this pen to start with, so I'll show you it now. This one's black, but I do have blue and green as well. So whatever, I don't know, maybe we'll rotate weeks with these. I'm not sure. We'll start with black.
You know what happens? See, Ralph, see what you did, man? Now everyone's got their pens this season. It's going to be unbelievable. All right, let's take those pens, guys, and dive into Nebraska, Illinois. That is going to be game number 1 here on the board. And obviously, this game's gone through a little bit of a market adjustment here. I've seen 7s. It was down to 6.5, back to 7 after the opening of 9.5. The total, I'm seeing 54.5, 55. So a lot of adjustments here for Nebraska, Illinois. And, boy, a lot of negative headlines coming out of Nebraska and Scott Frost there, Ralph.
Well, there is. And, I mean, very few coaches have unimpressed like Scott Frost has in 3 years. And he loves this team. He'll tell you that. But I think Illinois, very few teams has as much excitement about them as Illinois. The worst team in the Big Ten last year, but Brett Bielema can do that. You have established Big Ten coach. I liked Illinois in this game. What I do is I set my power ratings in the summer, and then I break down the game and I look at them. And, I like the excitement Illinois has. They have 22 super seniors. It's tied for the most in the Pac-12. In the Big Ten. And while most teams have starters, what that does for Illinois is give them more depth. But I will tell you this. Handicapping as many years as I have, I am always leery of a week 0 or week 1 dog where it seems the entire world is on. As you said, this opened up to 9.5, came down to 9. If you read football newsletters, they all seem to be on Illinois, at least leans toward them. And again, I'm excited for the team too. But for me, it comes down to this, Joe. While I handicap the game and I like it and I like the situation and I don't trust Scott Frost to cover that touchdown spread. My summer power rating, which I put a lot of work into, had Nebraska as an 11 or a 12-point favorite. So I have conflicting bits of information. For me, that makes it a no play. If I had to bet the game, I would lean with Illinois, but I also do like unders in these early conference games. People look at last year's stats and people think, oh, these are the numbers I'm going to use midseason. I often find week 1 and week 0 division foes only play to about 56% to the under, only 44% to the over, because you have more conservative play calling, especially when you're in the same division, not let alone the same conference. This basically counts as 2 wins for Nebraska and Illinois playing each other. So I lean under as my strongest opinion in the game. Conflicting power ratings and handicapping the game breakdown. If I had to pick a side, I would lean with Illinois plus the points.
All right, looking at Illinois plus the points. And Rob, we got a new coach here too. Brett Bielema taking over at Illinois. And I guess we got to get used to this term super senior now, I believe they're using. It's and 22 of them, in fact, 22 super seniors and 18 traditional seniors. A whole lot of seniors coming back for a new head coach here. What do you think of the game?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Joe. I think that's the first thing that caught my eye when this push began a few weeks back toward Illinois, was generally speaking, teams that are going through system changes and brand new coaching staffs aren't attracting money in week 1. But Illinois is kind of the exception to the rule. They did attract a lot of money. As you've mentioned a couple of times here, they're down to 7 points. I think it hit as low as 6.5. Their situation twofold. On offense, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Brett Bielema, we know he's a guy that likes to run the football, throw some play action, grind some clock, get a victory. He's got all that on offense. He's got running backs, offensive line, a veteran quarterback, tight end, decent receiving corps. So they should be good there. The defense is a little bit different. They ran that Tampa 2 defense under Lovie Smith. That thing got scrapped by Ryan Walters, who came over from Mizzou to be the defensive coordinator, implementing 3 different fronts here. And not different fronts, but different formations, 3-4, 4-2-5, 4-3. And, there's position changes that take place when you change fronts, Joe. All the defensive ends in this Illinois program are no longer defensive ends by 4 down lineman tradition. They're now outside linebackers. And a couple of the quotes from the kids, it's hard to understand at first. They're not used to being in coverage. That part of this game would make me a little bit leery if you were on Illinois. Offense, not so much. Defense, yes. Last year, Illinois, and you talk about super seniors, everybody's got returning starters, a bunch of them just about across the country. Last year, Illinois, the kids that are going to line up on Saturday, they ran for 285 yards against these Nebraska guys that tried to defend them last year. Illinois wins the game by 18, getting 16 points. That's a 34-point swing. But they did win the turnover margin, 5-0, and we can't expect that to happen again. Still, now you're at home and you're getting 7 points. Seems a little bit intriguing for the underdog here. For Nebraska, Adrian Martinez, the best quarterback on the field. Certainly, he doesn't have to look over his shoulder anymore. Luke McCaffrey's gone. He's at Rice, so he is the starter for sure. Nebraska's got a couple of key transfers in skill position spots that need to produce for this team. As Ralph said, Scott Frost tells you this is the most depth he's ever had, most speed, the most cohesion, all that stuff. I don't doubt any of it. I just wonder if they can cover 7 points against a team that beat him by 18 last year, plus 5 turnover margin or not. When you're a 16-point dog on the road and you win by 18 and you run for 285, all that stuff figures into what Brett Bielema likes to do. Time of possession was huge for Illinois last year, plus 13 minutes. I think if I had to, and I haven't yet, I would play Illinois plus the points here.
All right, Rob. Well, it's I bet you Scott Frost never thought, he thought maybe they'd be building him a shrine in Nebraska, not only as a player but as a coach when he took that job, Ralph. But the boy, they ran out of screws and bolts there putting that shrine together for him. So he better win this game and a few more here, because the hot seat is pretty hot in Nebraska for poor old Scotty Frost. All right, that's 1 o'clock, guys, on Saturday, that game. Let's go to the 2 o'clock game, and I can't wait for Ralph to tell me and break down UConn not UConn basketball, Ralph. UConn football, who hasn't played since 1976. Well, I don't know. It feels like it's been that long, though. It's been a little while, Ralph. UConn taking on none other than the Fresno State Bulldogs, who talk about they got some returning starters coming back as well. But UConn, I don't know what to make of a game like this here, Ralph. The line is all over the place. It's 4 touchdowns for Fresno State. It certainly feels like Fresno State at home should win this game rather easily. But how do you approach this?
I like Fresno State. I am on Fresno State. I bet Fresno State. Yes, you have an 11 a.m. start. The CBS Sports contract has given the Mountain West more money, but those Mountain West teams have to be very flexible. But, it's also a start for the kids traveling across country, playing their first games. It's simple for me. I'm a DeBoer fan. He was the OC at Fresno a few years back. They had their best 2 seasons. He took a promotion, went to Indiana as the OC, had 2 great seasons. Now he's back as the head coach. Last year was his first year. You have, position-wise, you heads and tails above UConn in every position. Would they talk about an improved defense? We'll see if that really comes to fruition. But I look at UConn and the way they got gashed last year. I'm not going to lay 27.5 points early on unless you can run the ball. Because if you're a pass-happy team and you have a big lead at halftime and you have to go to an offense in the second half that you're not accustomed to, there's a lot of times you can't extend the lead and the offense looks so shaky. Well, with this offensive line and the pair of running backs Fresno has, in the second half, if they go to a run game because they have a big lead, they will still extend the lead. They're that good. And when you look at UConn and you say, yes, they practiced last year, they didn't play, so they still have some experience. The concerning number for me is this. From when the football season would have started last year, all these teams have so many returning starters and so many new transfers. Connecticut lost 20 players in the transfer portal. That's how fast those kids were wanting to get out of there and hopefully play for a team that has had some success. So I will, for a rare instance, lay almost 4 touchdowns in a week 0 or week 1 game with Fresno.
Rob, I look at the total here, and it's hovering around this 63 number, and I'm going, do we anticipate UConn chipping in at all to the total here if I'm looking about going over? Or is this a situation where you think maybe it's a tale of 2 halves in this game?
Well, I think they can chip in, Joe. I really do. I mean, their running back, Kevin Mensah. I know Reggie Rivers a great running back for Fresno State, but Kevin Mensah, probably somebody the nation's never heard of, who if he was wearing a different uniform other than UConn would be very recognized. So they can run the football. The offensive line has got, as Ralph mentioned, they didn't play football last year. They claimed that that's the best decision they ever made because it brought them back to the weight room. And you start grassroots all over again if you're UConn. One thing to worry about, or at least consider if you want to know if UConn can score points here, is that Randy Edsall had a lot of time to add elements to this offense, which he claims you're going to see a lot more spread, a lot of different options. Now, it won't just be handed off the way they were because they had no quarterback or offensive line play 2 years ago when they last were on the field. So I think they can contribute. Fresno State's defense, second year of the system, should be improved, but certainly not shutdown type of defense. If UConn can find their way to 20, you probably get this game over the total. The reason why you bring so many notes to a show with Ralph is because he's going to chew up half of them. So I'll skip all the stuff about Kalen DeBoer that I was going to say in a positive fashion. But I will say this. He took this job last year, guys. First year, brought the system back. What do they do right away in a COVID year? They throw for an average of 356 yards a game. That's a lot of yardage in the first year of a head coach. And they scored 35 or more, 4+ times. So You can only imagine what this offense with everybody back is capable of. Jake Haener at quarterback. I mentioned Rivers, the receivers, the whole shooting match. UConn, if there's a huge flaw on this team defensively, it's the secondary. They're a mess in the secondary still. They've got one guy with experience. You're going to play against a team that throws for 356 a game. That's going to be troublesome. I think Fresno probably finds their way to 40-plus. If UConn, like I say, if they can get their way to 20, which is very, very possible, especially when you consider backdoor touchdowns in this game, I can see why there was a little push on this total. When you get to 63, it gets a little bit tricky, right? But I don't know that 63 is as key of a number as 64 is. So there's still some value where the 64 and 65 lay. You could land there 45-20. If we need Ralph to cover 48-20, get yourself a little higher. Even 48-17 finds an over here. So maybe that's the way I'll look, Joe. I'm interested to see what Connecticut brings to the table here. And as far as the time of the game is concerned, they're probably lucky, UConn I'm talking about here, that this is the very first game of the season. Because with no game prior to, Randy Edsall can schedule the travel to get used to West Coast time as really however he wants to. If they want to leave a day earlier, they can leave a day earlier to get accustomed to West Coast time. Whereas if you had played the prior Saturday, you wind up traveling Sunday night. You don't get the full practices in. I think it's a benefit to them from that regard. Both teams will be chomping at the bit. I think maybe you could look over here and still have some leeway.
All right. I do believe also this will be the first time to California there, Ralph, for the UConn team there. First time west of the Mississippi. So, this is going to be an awful lot of fun to watch. But we move on here, guys, to we'll keep it out west because I am looking very forward to this game. With Chip Kelly and the UCLA Bruins hosting Hawaii. And Ralph, I'm watching this on the schedule. This is one of the games that you circled between this and San Jose State, where it just feels like look ahead. I know it's only game one, but it's got look ahead real. UCLA's got LSU on deck next week, and I don't know how serious are they going to take Hawaii. Are you worried about maybe a little bit of a look-ahead situation for this UCLA team?
Well, Chip Kelly's saying if you guys lose to Hawaii, I might not be here for LSU, so I don't know about that. But, you talk about another coach that's underachieved, right? I mean, after he left Oregon and goes to the NFL, what were the expectations here? And, there's excitement now. An experienced quarterback, wide receivers that look to be good, but you look at UCLA and they were 3-4 last year in Pac-12 play. They were actually plus 45 yards per game. So that is much more like a 4-3 or a 5-2 team statistically. So you ask what they can do, and again, over 65% of all schools have 15 or more returning starters. So with everyone between 15 and 20, well, UCLA is on the top end of 20 returning starters, 10 on both offense and defense. But they have more depth than that. They actually returned 26 players that have started 7 or more games. Hawaii, I'll let Rob, I was on a pod with Rob with Hakeem earlier, and I'll let Rob talk about the new type of Hawaii offense. But even though they're trying to go up tempo and they're going to try to run a little more but still be up tempo, not something we hear often. In this game, I think Hawaii can keep it close enough. At least I'm buying into the reports of their improved defense and a couple guys at linebacker and safety that have really stuck out. And if you're Kelly and you have a big lead at halftime, I think you just go through the motions. Not that they're going to shut it down or not that they're going to play different because LSU's on deck. But I think if they do have a big enough lead, they let some other guys get some time on tape and they don't quite play at the same tempo in the second half. So I think Hawaii is a very live backdoor cover. And despite the new up-tempo-ness for Hawaii, I do still lean with the under in this opening game.
All right, Ralph, liking the under here. I mean, certainly it's amazing. We know Chip Kelly has the offense. He's got his quarterback back, which what feels like for 20 years here, Rob Veno. But surprisingly enough, there was an emphasis last year on defense for UCLA and Hawaii, and we're going to see a little more defense than we anticipate, I think, in this game. What about you?
Yeah, a couple of things to highlight if you like the UCLA side, Joe. Last year, the COVID year where they didn't play any non-conference because the Pac-12 started later than any other conference, you played all league teams. They didn't cover their first game, but then they went on a 4-0 ATS run, covered the next 4 straight, and they were well on their way to 5. But with 16 seconds left, heartbreaking loss to USC. They were the better team that entire game. USC did that a couple of times last year, pulling things out of the fire that they had no business pulling out of the fire. But that would have been 5 straight covers. Instead, it winds up as a 4-1, and then they go to their final game. They lose a double overtime heartbreaker to Stanford. But as Ralph mentioned, you know, Chip Kelly, I think, has been branded as this guy whose time has come and gone. You know, what he did at Oregon was gimmicky and caught people by surprise, especially if you live in the area I live in outside of Philadelphia. I mean, when these fans aren't jumping off the Ben Franklin Bridge, they're throwing Chip Kelly off it. So there's a lot of people that don't particularly care for him. But last year's numbers would suggest a little bit different. 231 yards rushing the football against conference foes only, 224 throwing it. Dorian Thompson-Robinson only getting better as a quarterback. So they've got some things here. And if I just look at the defensive side for them, I was very surprised at this, guys. In the Pac-12 last year, UCLA led that conference in sacks. 23 sacks, and it really wasn't close. The next closest team had 13. You would expect Washington or California or one of these defensive-minded teams to lead the league in sacks, but it was UCLA. On the Hawaii side, real quick, Todd Graham, as Ralph mentioned, you know, he's a spread guy, but all spreads are not created equal, right? Some spreads lean more towards air raid. Some spreads lean more towards the run. He's a run-oriented spread guy. So you'll see their play calling will balance off a little bit. It won't be, you know, 90-10 like it was under Nick Rolovich when Hawaii could never run the football. They'll be able to run it a little bit here. But he spent the entire summer emphasizing tempo. He wants to run a play every 15, 16 seconds. In this particular matchup, in a game that's being played out west, probably in some heat, you could see that being a slight advantage against a UCLA defensive front that, as I just mentioned, led the league in sacks last year, right? You run plays as fast as you can and try and wear them out second quarter. Graham said the offense didn't really click until the final 2 days of fall practice when what he said was an explosion of offensive touchdowns against their defense. Chevin Cordero, the quarterback, coming back. If they're ready for that, Joe, and they can put up those that type of points that we know Hawaii's always been capable of because they've got the skill guys, the offensive line looks to be pretty good, they're probably right in this game, and you'd have to consider them as a backdoor threat at the end of this contest. I like what Britton Brown said, though, the lead running back for UCLA. His quote this week was, "We have a good game plan going. I'm pretty sure we're going to want to get out there and run on these boys." And what he means by that is UCLA's the monster offensive line, and Hawaii gave up 5.6 a carry last year. And 5.6 is a lot, whether you're improved or not. UCLA has been said here already, 20 starters back. Everybody's got starters back. So I don't know that Hawaii matches up real well at the line of scrimmage against UCLA where that's concerned. Game might make it over first half. We'll see. I mean, when I say that, the argument to that would be real quick, you know, maybe teams sputter their first week out of the gate. But if they come out on all cylinders, guys, this could be a little bit of a back and forth duo because I do think Todd Graham and this run and gun with his son Bo calling the plays probably, you know, lights up the scoreboard this year for Hawaii.
So we do know that it was, I believe, 2 halftime leads they blew last year there, Ralph. Was it not? 28-10, I think, was one of them. The other one was 34-20. In fact, all 4 of their losses by 6 points or less last year. So I don't think Chip Kelly's going to take his foot off the gas here if given the opportunity. Like you said, if they don't win, he's probably not there for LSU next week anyway, isn't it? So they might be coming out and firing on all cylinders here. And this leads us, of course, into our final game here in Week 0 we're going to cover. And this is the 9:30 Eastern Time kickoff, and good Lord. The name, well, I guess maybe the good news, we'll start there, Ralph, is that they only got to travel about an hour, I think, right, UTEP? So this is not a very, not a long traveled game, but what can you say? One of these teams lost, I think, was it Dixie State, Tarleton State, some sort of state in somewhere that nobody knows, and I don't know. What are you going to make of this thing? It's 8, it was 10, it's another one of these where the market seems to be all over the map with these two teams. What do you think, Ralph? Is this going to be as close as maybe some in the market think it is?
Yeah, it's up to 10, and I'm simply going to say this. I am not playing the game. I threw it out pretty early, and I'm simply not going to bet on a team that is 5-27 the last 3 years, laying 10 points on the road to a rival. This is the I-10 rivalry. New Mexico State, I mean, we laugh that it's a nothing game, but between these two schools, it's huge in football and more so in basketball. I mean, it's a huge basketball rivalry. So, you know, New Mexico State, I believe, has won 3 straight in the rivalry. I'll put that.
Uh-oh. All right, well, we lost right
that
there.
In quotation. It's 1-11 the first year, 1-11 the second year, and then 3-5 last year. So they were moving up. And while New Mexico State is as bad as any team, they are my lowest rated team in the power ratings. I'm going to give you a couple names that are really going to stick out for the Aggies this year. Omori Samuels, their running back, a Michigan transfer. At center, Eli Johnson started 12 games at Ole Miss. He is now at center. At left tackle, Doxtator was an NFL prospect that returned this year. And then they have a Missouri wide receiver that is starting as well. So while this New Mexico State has fewer returning starters than anyone, there is more talent on this than there's been over the last 5 years. So we'll see if he can mix it in. To me, it would be the dog. And, you know, I was on a show with Dave. Dave was on WagerTalk today, and Dave's normally on with us on Friday. I will let you know from Dave Cokin, he brought up and he said if he had to play this game, he would be playing New Mexico State plus the 6.5 for the first half. You're getting value in the first half with 6.5. And a team like New Mexico State, if you're a team that regularly makes mistakes, more often than not, those mistakes start coming out in the second half when you get worn down and there's a better team playing. So only way I would go is the dog. And from Dave Cokin on WagerTalk today from a few days ago, his lean, not a play, is the dog on the first half plus 6.5.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, Samuels and Jawan Price can also burn in the back. It's an interesting backfield. And also, Rob, UTEP, listen, they got a returning starter. And the end of last year, I believe their last 3 games that we saw them last year, they're averaging just about 31 points a game. So they really looked like they were starting to put it together at the end of last year. And again, if you lose to Tarleton State, I don't know what to tell you. But where are you going with this game here?
Well, as a guy who cashed a ticket on Tarleton State that day, I'll tell you this. New Mexico State played 2 games in the FCS spring season, which head coach Doug Martin didn't consider games that they went out to try and win. His team had been, as Ralph said about UConn, his team had been ravaged by the transfer portal because they chose to opt out of the 2020 FBS season. So he had a bunch of guys, and he used those 2 games as spring practices against Tarleton State and Dixie State. He lost 1, he won 1. You look at the returning starters, it's only 3. Certainly, they're depth shy. They always are. They're undersized. They always are. I want to give a quick shout out and kudos to our colleague Drew Martin, who actually drove the I-10 and watched the Texas-El Paso practice and went the other way and watched a New Mexico State practice and reported on both of them on a show we did together. He's got more time on his hands than I do. New Mexico State, from a fundamental standpoint, this is an interesting game, Joe, because New Mexico State can't stand up at the line of scrimmage against this team. You talked about backs for New Mexico State. The two backs for Texas El Paso, power backs, Deion Hankins, who led the team in rushing last year, is the starter. But they get their 2019 leading rusher back off injury here as well, Quadras Wadley. So Dana Dimmel, the head coach, we're talking about Scott Frost on a hot seat. There can be a hot seat in El Paso too, and this guy's on it. His quote was, "My offensive scheme is so complex that it takes my offensive linemen about 3 years to fully comprehend it. And now I've got a group that's got 3 years under their belt. We're really impressed with our depth, with their knowledge. We think the offense is going to take off." So if it takes that long to understand it, I guess the results the first 2 years are explainable, but it goes to your point of them coming on strong at the end of last year, putting up points and yardage. They also promised to mix in some of the passing game now. They feel a little more confident in the passing game because Gavin Hardison, the quarterback, made great strides in the spring, and they've got good receivers that are going to waste without throwing the football. So this team could be more balanced. I'm interested to see how many points they can put up in this game in particular. They can push New Mexico State's defense around. Where it gets interesting, if you like the dog, I tell you right now, New Mexico State changed their defense, and they're going to play an umbrella defense, according to defensive coordinator at UTEP. Everything underneath. They're going to make you choose 6, 8, 7 yards all the way down the field and hope you make a mistake along the way. The reason why it's fascinating is because New Mexico State plays one of those like 3- and 5-step drops, a quick hitting, up-tempo passing game. So if you're deep in a shell all the time and you're allowing these completions to happen, New Mexico State has a legitimate opportunity with quick passing to go right down the field. So this is there was a huge push on the total in this game upward. And I can understand why, because when I look at it real close, both offenses should be able to move the football rather well. And, now some of the value's gone out of that, Joe, because 58 and 59, when you get to the high 50s, those are real key numbers, and you've lost some value there. So we'll have to look at it again. But I think this game becomes more interesting than it looks, when you just look at the brand names on paper. And we'll see if Texas El Paso really is what Dana Dimmel thinks they can be on offense this year.
Yeah, it opened up single digits. It's been pushed up there a little bit here now at 10, but you're right. They do anticipate, looks like, some points in this game. So that one, 9:30 Eastern time, guys. That's how you'll see that game as week 0 is underway. It's here, hard to believe. And, of course, week 1 just around the corner, where you'll have situations like LSU and UCLA getting ready to do battle. A lot of big week 1 matchups here, and we've got you covered all next week here, guys, on the College Football Daily Show. We'll be here next week for you, helping you break it down, looking how to approach it, do a little review of what we witnessed here this weekend. And, of course, get over to WagerTalk.com. You can visit Ralph's page. You can certainly visit Rob Veno's page. Both have always some great information. Ralph's got his college football guide available right now for you to download by visiting his page there. And the fun has just begun here, guys, on the season. College football is here. So you guys will have an opportunity to make it one heck of a profitable season, and we'll do our best to make sure that happens. So on behalf of Ralph Michaels and Rob Veno, hit that bell in the upper right-hand corner, and Ralph's holding up a pen, which either means he's going to throw it at me or he's going to interject here and drop some other wisdom on us. So go ahead. Between you and Rob with your pens, we're going to have to get the color straight. I'll tell you that right now.
Come on, Joe. You are in preseason form. That was just my goodbye. Thank you all for watching, pen. My God, if you don't know that by now.
I
had that one right.
I wasn't sure if he was showing off, Rob, because you had to show him up earlier with your own damn pen. All right, both of you put your pens up, all right? Yeah. Right here. I got your pen right here. Guys, best of luck. We'll be back again next week. Make it a profitable weekend. Thanks for hanging with us.
Would you like to bet $20 and win $100 at BetMGM regardless of your wager's outcome and get $100 in free wager bucks? Just go to wt.buzz/MGM for